Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out of the range with my B&T TP9 with its suppressor. We just recently came back from Switzerland where we were touring the factory. One of the things that came up in my conversations with Karl, who was the founder of B&T, was how did B&T get its start? Well, it got its start with suppressors, and that's what we want to share with you this afternoon. We'll show you the full factory tour video here in a little bit, but first, let's dive into the background and the history of B&T. Karl, having been a shooter his entire life and a machinist, started tinkering with suppressor designs as far back as 1988. Now, he was manufacturing suppressors for the civilian market, and he would make one-off suppressors for his own use, for his friends' use, or even for sales to other consumers. Now, here in Switzerland, the gun laws are very liberal, so suppressors at the time were just pretty much going in and out of gun shops, and you could even make your own, whatever, unregulated. So that's where he got his start. Now, you jump forward to 1991, and the company of B&T was formed. And when B&T was formed, they brought to market a suppressor that was standardized. That was their first product, and that's what I'm holding here in my hand. And I'll go ahead and screw it together here in a moment. But so you have two distinct parts with the first suppressors that they produced, and this being an example of them. Has a lightweight aluminum body and baffles. This weighs almost nothing, very lightweight. This is the booster or Nielsen device. It's a self-contained unit. It's made out of steel, heavier, but everything is contained within this device. And obviously it screws together like this. So now we have an early example of a B&T silencer. And for many years, B&T would focus on the production of silencers, but Karl likes to tinker. And that's something I've learned while I've been here. He has always got something going on in his mind, and he's always trying different things. So by 1992, we had something that came from Karl's mind, and it looks like this. This is a cutaway version, and this is a functional version. When I saw this, I immediately thought, what is old is new again. You may see, let me show you the backside of it. This may look like a popular suppressor that's currently on the market. It reminds me of an Osprey. If you take a look at the inside of the design, the bore is up here. Now this one does not have a booster in it. This is a 22 silencer, but you can see where the baffles are. There's a voluminous expansion chamber below the center of bore. So what this does is it gives those expanding gases a place to go. It uses the space below the bore because the handgun itself is going to be about that tall anyway. It uses that space for the gases to expand, so it's not going back down the barrel and it's not exiting out the muzzle end behind the bullet, so it reduces the sound signature. So again, what is old is new again. So when you're looking at that Osprey, there were designs already out there that B&T had come up with. Now this one has a screw that runs through the center that holds the entire system together. This is missing its Nielsen device, but this just gives you an example of something that you've probably seen before. When I looked at this, and with its outer sleeve, I thought of the Salvo 12. But once again, we have the bullet passing through above with the ability of the gas to go below as an expansion chamber, increasing the volume. Pretty unique for the era. We're talking in the 1990s, guys. Then we jump into, and I'm just going to show you some baffles here. We jump into 1996, and Karl was playing with different baffle designs, and I have many here to show you guys, but this one caught my attention. This looks like a helical silencer design. That's because that's what this is. You have a cone, as you would with a traditional baffle and a suppressor, but you also have the ability of the gases to flow around the baffles and cool themselves. And we would call this today a flow-through type design, where you have gases going through and being captured by the cones trapped behind the bullet, but you also have the ability of the gases to escape around the baffle itself, swirl, and cool themselves. So that, again, is something that was being done a decade or more ago. Then, another cool device that I saw while I was here going through their historical collection. This is a 308 silencer. They call this the Rotex. Now, if you look at this design, and if you're a suppressor owner, and if you have, say, a 51T muzzle device, this sound may be familiar to you. The ratchet locking suppressor design dates back to 2005, and B&T. They came up with it. You have the release lever here, unscrew it, take it off, put it back on with that distinctive ratcheting sound. So once again, B&T has been innovating in silencers for decades. And what's even more interesting to me is seeing these designs and dating them and realizing that these predate some designs that we see in the United States that other companies take credit for. All right, now let's talk about two other things that I found of particular interest, because these are hot topics apparently currently in the United States. Let's talk about the Mark 23. I recently did a video on my Mark 23, which is an H&K pistol that was developed for U.S. Special Operations, and it's a .45 caliber pistol that's roughly the size of a Desert Eagle. Now the handgun is, if you watch the video, I'm madly in love with it. Yes, it's big, it's clumsy, it's awkward, but it's an interesting piece of history and it works exceptionally well. And it has a design on its baffles that has created some controversy. I'm holding here two examples of baffles that are very Mark 23-ish looking. Now you might say, oh well, yeah, B&T copied these baffle designs from another company like Knights or perhaps somebody else. But there's one problem with that. If you take a look at the one that I'm holding here, this one dates back to, we didn't have SolidWorks in 1971. This is the drawing for this baffle design. Now, B&T won't take credit for the design. Karl's very modest, and he said, well, really, it's a take on a design that was developed during World War II for the Sten gun. He just modified it. But taking a look at this drawing, the date on it is 14/5/71. Of course, the Europeans use different dates than we do. They're a little bit backwards. But, 14/5/1971 is when this design that so many people are laying claim to was actually developed. This is a B&T entry into the Mark 23 program. Now this little guy is called the Impulse 2A, and it's roughly the same size as the Mark 23 suppressor that we have in the United States market. This competed for the design, and in the United States, the Mark 23 was adopted with the CAC suppressor, which you've seen in my video. I love the setup. But this, with its locking device and its booster device, was developed by B&T, and H&K uses this suppressor on the European market. The CAC design isn't sold here. This is. So if you use a Mark 23 in Europe, this is a suppressor you're going to be given to, it's going to come to you for use with the H&K pistol. I thought that was extremely interesting. This one is near and dear to my heart because this one is called the Mars suppressor. This was developed for the United States Marine Corps. This is a current suppressor design. The Marine Corps is looking at adopting suppressors. They're doing a lot of testing right now in the Marine Corps, and they're equipping fire teams and platoons with riflemen that all are using silencers because they're trying to, learn how useful the suppressor might be on the modern battlefield. And this is a can from B&T that the U.S. Marine Corps is using. And this one's pretty unique because it is designed for a 5.56, and you think, well, this looks like it's a fairly long silencer. Keep in mind, it's meant to slide over a muzzle device that goes in about that far. You only have about 3 inches of actual baffles. And then on the end here, we have a design that is a flash suppressor. So at night, now I've not tested this myself, but I'm told this design reduces the flash signature to nothing. Now, if you're familiar with 5.56 cans and you've shot them at dusk or in the evening, the best can in the world that I've ever shot, and you'll see it in many of my videos when we do straight on shots in broad daylight, you'll see a muzzle flash coming out of the end of the can. This dissipates that, much like a birdcage flash hider would on the end of a barrel of a 5.56 rifle. If you've ever taken a birdcage off your 16-inch barreled rifle or your 20-inch barreled rifle, you're going to see a pretty nice muzzle flash. That little tiny device reduces that flash signature to almost nothing, and this Mars can uses similar technology. So I thought that was really cool to see this, because I know that the Marine Corps is now using those suppressors. Now here I'm just going to show you a few other designs, because I want to show you guys how much B&T focused on suppressors before they got so heavily into firearms design. And these are just a few examples of some of their suppressor designs, or I'm sorry, baffle designs for suppressors. Here we have a typical cone-shaped baffle. We see this a lot in the US market. But if you look down here, you'll see separate rings. This ring is slightly taller than this ring, so that's telling me that gas can blow by it. There are holes drilled. These aren't perfectly round holes, and gases are capable of venting out around the suppressor. So you're not just trapping gases into the cone like so many suppressors do, trying to keep the gas from getting out of the barrel. They're letting those gases escape around those baffles, swirl and cool themselves. And so you can see that interesting concept. Now, many of these designs aren't even being used in current suppressors, because Karl is constantly thinking of things, and they have an R&D shop that we've seen, and they'll go downstairs and come up with an idea, they'll rapid prototype it, take it out and start shooting it literally within days. And so you can see a suppressor baffle design like this. There's a smaller version of it, which I found to be very interesting. You'll see a flat cut here, an out of round hole, so that as the bullet passes through, gases can escape at an angle, but you can also see holes drilled through. This is almost a mini version of this, where gases can escape. This ring is slightly larger than this ring, so gases are once again allowed to move around the baffle itself, versus trying to trap all those gases, causing horrific back pressure down the barrel, which increases the port pop, the gases escaping by the shooter's ear, and reducing back pressure. And this is another one of those. And then here you'll see a more traditional cone-shaped baffle that you'll find in modern suppressors. But one thing I found unique about this one is that you'll see holes drilled here. Now, I remember being down at Silencer Shop and looking at a cutaway of a SIG suppressor, and when I looked at this looks very similar to what SIG is currently using in their modern suppressors, and this thing dates back years, if not a decade or more. This is something that's just an example of something they tried and moved on. So what I've learned about B&T is that they have a very deep history that's heavily rooted in suppressor design. That's where the company started. And then even today, even though they've moved heavily into firearms, they're still working with suppressors and being very innovative, because this is being used today by the United States Marine Corps in 2018. I hope you guys learned something about the history of B&T, their early development of silencers, something that I personally found to be of interest simply because of the discussions that I have read online about who has borrowed from whose design. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. And one point of clarification I'd like to make before we close out is that the suppressor at the end of the video, where I said the Marine Corps was using it, I have to clarify that they are testing it. As of right now, I don't believe they've actually adopted it. Guys, if you would like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best possible way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. Please click the link down below and check out some of the incentives that we have that we give back to our Patreon supporters. Also, if you'd like to pick up a t-shirt, you can support us that way as well, and swing by forgedfromfreedom.com, check out the Mac collection, pick up a t-shirt, and that's another great way to help support us here at the channel. And last but not least, please check out coppercustom.com, which is our online store. Thanks for 10 years of following the channel, and we'll talk to you guys soon.